All right, so welcome to the first class of the series. Last week was just an introduction. This week is going to be a real, we're going to get into it. All right? So, we all have responsibilities.
Me?
Yeah, no, not you. You're retired. Once you're retired, you don't have to do anything. Yeah, right? So, you have work commitments, you have shul commitments, you have family commitments.
You have mental commitment.
Right. Those usually we leave to the, and many times we're torn in a bunch of different directions. The question is, hey guys. The question is, yeah, you can sit here anywhere you want. Here's a new book. That's the old book. And the question is, where should your priorities lay? Where do you put the focus?
Oh, it would definitely be pleasure before work.
Definitely golf before work.
Yeah, definitely. All things play. Well, golf isn't really pleasure.
Right.
Golf is beating a ball around the bush.
There you go. So sometimes you have a business, and then something goes wrong, and then you have to stay late in the office. And then the question is, how do you balance home life? We're going to be at page 22. How do you balance home life and family life and shul life? Everything is, it could be hard. You pull in different directions. So if you do the smart thing, you ignore everyone equally. And
Right away, I have some free time.
There you go, bro. Mr. Chef. All right. So we're keeping in mind. Yes, you guys weren't here last week. So this year we're going to be focusing on Rashi Sichas. These are talks of the Rebbe. The Rebbe took a Rashi, deconstructed it, and then put it back together, put Humpty Dumpty back together, and we learn a lesson. So there's certain rules you got to know about Rashi. Number one, Rashi says, in this thing, Rashi is only going to explain a meaning to a name, because in the book of Genesis is the book of names, right? We have Adam, Chava, Cain, and Hevel, Avraham, Yitzchak, Sarah, Rachel, right? Like for example, Rachel and Leah, we don't know the names why they're called Rachel and Rivka. We don't know why they're called Rachel. The 12 tribes we do. Dinah we know, but not every time the Torah says a name. So if Rashi explains a name, it's because we have to know. Rule number 2. Rashi explains a word the first time the word appears, and then relies on the fact that you are going to remember the next time the word appears. Right? That you do your homework, you review. In the old days in the Gemara, they would review things 100 times to make sure they remember. Now we have a phone. Right? And Rashi, because he's speaking to a 5-year-old, always speaks in the most clear, direct way. He won't use terms and phrases for poetic license in order to sound intelligent. This isn't, some fancy magazine. All right, you got it. Those are the rules you have to keep in mind for tonight.
He won't use esoteric words like esoteric.
Right, exactly. All right. So in this week's Parsha, text number 1 on page 23. This week's Parsha, we have the story where Hashem tells Avraham that Avram, before he's called Avraham, that he's going to have children. And Avram answers the Eibishter. He says, but I saw in astrology, don't ask me how that works. I think we've been over this in previous classes. There is a science. I know I'm using the word science, maybe it's not understood the way it is now. But there is a study and knowledge that you can predict sort of vaguely the future in the stars, astrology. There is some knowledge to it. How that knowledge has been lost to us. Just because we don't know it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But we know people used to know it. And we have various references in the Torah. How that works, again, I don't know. Yeah.
I was just going to say, astrologers say that the stars impel, they don't compel.
Okay.
So, they lead you in the direction, but they don't make you go there.
Right, so one of the most famous examples is, that why did Paro decide to throw the boys into the river? He could have killed the boys There's a much easier way to kill boys. Why the river? You could.
He was sacrificing to his god, the river.
First of all, there are a bunch of gods. I mean, but so the reason is this is where you need midrash. The reason is because the stargazers told him that the leader of the Jewish people, the Redeemer, is going to be struck by water. How and when and what, they don't know. It's vague. But we know the story that Moshe hit the rock, and they couldn't go into Israel, so they didn't know the details. So Avraham, or back then he's called Avraham, and before he changed his name in order to vote. So he tells the Eibishter, he tells God, he says, but I see in the stars, in the system that you yourself created, that I'm not going to have any children. So God says, exactly, Avram's not going to have children, but Avraham will have children.
Okay, so answer me a question.
No.
When,
This class I talk, not you. Okay, I'm kidding, go ahead.
okay,
You go, yeah.
when Mark was born,
Yeah.
at first we thought he was going to be called Avram. And our rabbi said, no, it
Oh.
had to be Avraham.
Yes, because if you look at the text in 1a, Torah is actually, you're not allowed to call Avraham. I don't know if you can't call a kid Avram. I'm not that.
You can
But
call him Abi.
but our forefather, you can't, because it says here, the name will not be Avram. You're not allowed to call Avram, our forefather, by the name Avram. Now it's Avram.
Okay.
Now, if you're naming your kid after our patriarch, you probably want to do Avram, because he accomplished a lot, some great things. I mean, actually on both sides of
What was he named after?
Avram's not
My
named.
grandfather.
Avraham and Nasha, both of your grandfathers.
Yeah.
So Hashem changes his name. Your name's not going to be Avram. Your name's going to be Avram. That's all right. Why? And the Torah tells us the meaning. Why? Because I appointed you the father to multitude of nations. What's going on over here? So Kumt Rashi. Rashi explains, text 1b. Rashi explains to us the difference between Avram and Avraham. What's the difference between Avram and Avram? No? Hey, good. Oh. So Rashi explains that Avram is Rosh Tevis, is an acrostic for Avram Graham, the Hebrew for father of multitude, Avram, Av of many nations. The letter Resh doesn't belong over there. The name should be Avram, not Avraham. So put the hey, take out the Resh. So Rashi explains the letter Resh was from the original name. And because Avraham originally was from Aram, that's the name, Aram. We find that nation many times in Tanakh, Aram. And he was a father only to them. What does it mean, the father? Because he was a teacher, he brought monotheism there, his native land. Now he's going to be the father to the entire world, so we leave the Resh there. All right? Altus verstanden? Everything's understood? Good? Good, all right. So now Rashi, come late to class. You got to sit next to the teacher. So take off my belt.
He's
And
instituted a fine system now.
Exactly.
If you come in late, it's a fine.
yeah, it's fine.
It's not
By the way,
bad.
when I was in yeshiva, if you came late, you had a knas, you had a fine. That
What was the fine?
money. $1, $2, whatever it is. Yeah, $1, yeah. Sometimes we'd make a calculation. We're very tired. Is it worth $5? Yeah, it's worth $5. Yeah. So Rashi. What the Resh doesn't, what the Resh is there. So Rashi just says, Rashi just says, really, it doesn't really answer the question. We're on page 23. Rashi doesn't really answer the question why the Resh is there. He just says, once it's there, leave it there. But as we go on, we're going to realize that everything Rashi does here, everything that Rashi does is perfect. Okay, so let's look at the abnormalities over here. The Rashi is the Rashi is coming to address. How you doing?
Very tired.
Very tired, huh? You're watching the polls the whole day, yeah?
Nope.
No, I'm kidding around. That's Mati's job.
doing laundry.
That's Mati's job. Now, the question is like this. in Parshas Bereshis and in Parshas Lech, we have a lot of names, many names. Because we go 10 generations. It jumps, right? It goes Adam to Noach, Noach to Avraham. Many times it doesn't tell us the name, right? So, for example, last week, the name Peleg, Torah explains to us the name. The name Peleg means to separate, division. And Rashi says, why is he called Peleg? Because in that generation we had the Tower of Babylonia, where civilization divided. But there are a bunch of names that the Torah doesn't give us. So the Torah introduced us to Avraham last week, right? Last week's parsha we read Terach had Avraham, Nachor, and Haran. And but Torah doesn't give us an explanation for his name. So why do you think there's a reason for the name? Maybe there's no reason. Okay, makes sense. And number one. So number two.
Why is he an Ira?
Yeah, based on his name is not Ira. His name is the Freemish.
Why are you a Larry?
Yeah, his name's not Larry. His name is
Same
Lebegetzen.
reason.
So go based on the rule that Rashi. If there's an issue, Rashi is going to explain it the first time, and if the name Avram has a meaning and the Torah didn't tell us, how come Rashi didn't tell us in last week's parsha? Not only that, this whole thing where his name is changed is towards the end of the parsha. The name Avram appears many times. Hashem spoke to Avram, said Lecha. Rashi had, 15, 20 opportunities to explain the name Avram. Doesn't say a word. All of a sudden, oh, by the way, I forgot something. That doesn't work, right? Rashi, the rule is Rashi always explains it first time. Okay, and the third question, based on the idea that Rashi you had to come last week, for the rules of Rashi. Rashi wrote his commentary for a 5-year-old, right? He wants to write it in a simple way. So he doesn't use weird phrases. So why couldn't Rashi just say, we'd leave the resh in its place? Instead, Rashi says, it's not moved from its place. It's not in Hebrew, not in English. Just because, even though we said Avraham means the father of nations, and really the resh doesn't belong there, just say, okay, the resh remains. It's not moved from its place. It seems like a... Now, there's an age-old... This idea, Kabbalistic idea, is very, very famous. That just because you don't know the name, you don't know the meaning of the name, doesn't mean a name doesn't have meaning. Right? There's a famous idea in Kabbalah that when a parent names a child, they experience an idea of prophecy. You ever heard of that before? No?
Nope.
Text 2. This is from Chaim Vital, the Rizal's teacher. And he says, when a child is born, the parents choose a name. The name choice is not random. Hashem places the name that belongs to the child's soul in the parent's mind. You think you have free choice. It's like in the movies or TV shows, they do product placement, subliminal messaging, right? You think you have free choice. Nah, I'm kidding. So just because the Torah didn't explain the meaning of the name Avram, doesn't mean there's no meaning. Maybe you didn't understand. So now we can explain why didn't Rashi explain the name Avram before? Because maybe we didn't know the meaning. The Eibishter put the name, so it could be Terach, Avram's father didn't know why he was naming his son. Same thing as when Peleg's father named him Peleg. Did he know that 52 years later, I think 58 years later, there's going to be the whole Tower of Babylon and all that? No, so far 52 is that's when Avram was sorry. But he prophesied and didn't realize what he was prophesying. And could be when Terach named him Avram, he had no idea why the name came to him. And only later, when Hashem changes his name to Avram, now we can understand why his name. Now we understand why his name is Avram, and now we understand why his name is Avram. Now, usually when Hashem changes the name and you don't need the letter is removed. Like, for example, in this parsha. Later, after, like 10 verses later, what's Sarah's original name?
Sorry.
Sarai, right? Sin, Resh, Yud. Hashem changes her name to Sarah. How do you spell Sarah? Sin, Resh, Hey. The Hey is not needed. So what happens to the Hey? To the Yud? It's gone. So if the Resh is not needed, why would Hashem say, the heck with it, just leave it there. You have room on the paper anyway. It's like the graph paper, you have an extra square, that's not, it doesn't make sense. That answer doesn't, as they say in Jewish, felsich, it's something's missing. There's got to be, there's got to be more. So it's like this. Because normally, now that, since we're in the political season,
It's over, maybe.
no, it's never over. Because you know what they start doing tomorrow? Campaigning to get reelected.
No, they're going to be campaigning to the Congress to say, elect me,
Right,
because
exactly.
the regular popular vote did nothing.
Let's hope. Let's hope everything's clean. Anyway, so let's say a guy starts off as city commissioner, and then he graduates to mayor, right? And then he graduates to county commissioner or state committee, whatever, governor, senator.
What's up the law?
Works up to. So the bigger of a big macher he becomes, the more he forgets about the people. The people in the right.
So we're going to change his name too?
Yeah, exactly. So Avraham was from Aram. Aram was a place like Iran, Iraq over there, and he was a big influence over there. It says in this week's parsha in the beginning that Avraham and Sarah left Haran. Avraham. Okay, let's give a little background because we have a bunch of different places. Avraham is born in a place called Ur Kasdim. Ur Kasdim is in Aram. Okay. After the whole story with Nimrod and the furnace, you familiar with that story? Anybody? With Avraham,
Vaguely, yeah.
Avraham smashes his father's idols.
Oh, yeah.
So Avraham wanted to prove to his father that there was only one God. So he smashed all the idols, except for the biggest one, which I believe was the statue of Nimrod. And he left the hammer in the hands of the idol. And his father came back. His father sold idols. His father came back and said, "What happened?" He said, "Wasn't me.
Not me.
Wasn't me." So what?
I didn't do it.
So what do you mean? So he says all the idols were fighting. Which one's the better God? I don't believe in the stuff that they were arguing. And the biggest guy, says, it's not who speaks the best. It's who's the strongest, right? And he took out a hammer, smashed everybody. So the father said, but these guys don't talk, walk, wield a hammer. He said, so why do you worship them? So the father said, okay, you're an anti-believer. So his own father gave him over to authorities to be burned at the stake.
Nice guy.
Yeah. Avraham and Terach got along swimmingly, right? You think you have daddy issues? I mean, yeah. So Nimrod, who was a king and considered himself a god, told Avraham, "Listen, you're a real believer?" I said, "Yeah." Said, "And if I toss you into a fire, you still a believer?" I said, "Yeah, sure. What do you mean?" So he tossed Avraham into a fire, and the fire didn't burn him. Not that there was no fire. Mm-hmm. There was fire, but the fire didn't burn him. Because the same God who decided fire burns decided now fire doesn't burn. This was, and by the way, the significance of the story isn't that Avraham was saved from the fire. Avraham was trying to teach them that there's one guy who masters everything. And he can decide when fire burns, when fire doesn't burn. And it's not a contradiction. He's the boss. And you could decide, So after that story, Avram's family was non grata in the neighborhood, you know what I'm saying? So they had to move. So they moved from Ur Kasdim, Aram, to Haran, which is Iraq. And
From Iran to Iraq.
yeah, kind of thing. Or one part of Iraq, another place, yeah, Iraq, yeah. Again, Haran is for sure Iraq. Where Ur Kasdim is exactly, I'm not sure. You look at the map. Every Chumash has their own, has their own map. It's kind of like when you look at the map of where the Jews crossed the Reed Sea, right? One person has it here. No, it's an argument where it happened. Anyway, and yeah, you heard what happened. Egypt let an Israeli destroyer pass through the Suez Canal.
Yeah, they did.
Let?
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They weren't happy about it.
but they let. I mean, they didn't stop it. Anyway,
They're gonna stop it.
They could have charged him extra.
yeah, they probably did.
They
Yeah.
should,
And,
you know.
and,
a
and,
gun tax.
and Israelis like, are you crazy? We're not going to pay. We're not going to pay retail price. Anyway, so the
Gotta be wholesale.
exactly below cost.
the ships
Anyway,
are
so Avraham in this week's parsha, Hashem tells Avraham, leave Haran and go to the land of Canaan. All right. So when Avraham was in Aram, he was considered the father. He was the big macher there because he was telling everybody about, now Hashem's giving him a lot of responsibility. Now he's becoming, president of all presidents. So what happens to his constituents in Aram? Forget about those guys. So the Rebbe explains, no. That's exactly the reason why the Reish is still there. Although Avram became a big knacker now he's a very important person. Everybody wants his phone number. He still had time for his original guys. Look at the nicht. We said this here. We're text 3a. Mm-hmm. This is the Rebbe said. This is what the Rashi means when he writes the letter Reish. It means he was only the father to the nation of Aram. But these words, Rashi informs us that there's a problem. The letter Reish does not belong, but it also says that he was a father to Aram, and also now a father to the other. Here we go. To everyone else. That means what makes Avram special is that he has this ability to have time for the little guy and the big guy, because you could look at your schedule accomplishments as or you could look at time. We've discussed this in the past, how Gentiles look at time and how Jews look at time. This isn't like a Nobel Prize idea. Jonathan Sachs has a wonderful essay about this. Most of the stuff he writes is wonderful. If you don't read his stuff, it's good stuff. Anyway, so he writes that Gentiles, no fault of their own, that's their culture. They look at the calendar as just a cycle, right? Meaning one leads into the other. You get past yesterday, you throw it out, and then the next, what's today? November 5th, right? The next November 5th comes next year. Is there anything to do with November 5th this year? Not really. You just, right? You do what you got to do, and that's it. I'm in the military. I'm getting to my 20. I got my pension, and that's it. That's the way they are. Jonathan Sachs says Jews were taught. The Torah teaches us to look at time in a linear fashion. That everything you do is built upon what you accomplished in the past. So at the end of the year, we just came from Rosh Hashanah. So the month of Elul, I know we're far away from the month of Elul. So Rabbi, don't tell me about month of Elul. Repenting, I just started sitting. I haven't even started yet to pray that. Come on. I mean, but the month of Elul, the idea is you're supposed to look back at the past year and see, what did I do right and what did I do wrong? What could I get? I could get better. So the accomplishments you made are built on your earlier accomplishments, and then what you accomplish in the future, what you did earlier is present in these new accomplishments. Yeah, make sense? Good. That makes sense. Good. So this is what Avraham. That's the difference between a parent and a politician. Right? You went over to the mayor, right?
Yeah, I have to go over to the mayor. I have a complaint.
We have a pothole in the street, what's wrong?
No, my water bill.
Oh boy.
These guys never come at the same time.
No.
So they come every 30
It's Broward
days.
County. It's not the Broward County. It's Broward County.
Yeah, it is.
It
Anyway.
makes a difference.
Anyway.
It makes a difference if you come 34 days as opposed to 30 days.
I'm drinking so much water. Anyway,
You
so
pay an extra
if
what,
you go over to the mayor.
It was 50.
Anyway, no. Let's continue. If you go over to the mayor and say, "Would you like to be senator?" Say, "Sure." "We'd like to be governor?" "Sure." Meaning, they would like to be, but this is just they look at every office really as a step towards greater aspirations. If they tell you not, they're lying to you. Every mayor wants to be a governor, and every governor wants to be president. In the words of Mel Brooks, it's good to be the king. Right? And once you imagine you go over to the president of the United States and say, my water bill is high. You think it's time to listen to Irish radio about your water bill was sugar and cup? Okay.
I once told the President of the United States that I thought that my job was worthwhile. Could he give me a better position? I actually spoke to Jerry Ford.
Oh wow, look at it.
He asked me what I did for a living, and I told him.
I drive the rabbit crazy. You know that joke that Reagan taught, right? When the Russian and the American are speaking, and the Russian says. The American says, I could walk into the Oval Office, I could bang my fist on the desk and say, I don't like the job you're doing. The Russians, I can do the same thing.
Joke.
I thought it was a Reagan joke.
It's a Yakov Smirnoff joke.
Who's Yakov Smirnoff?
Yeah.
Reagan told Reagan told this joke in the 80s. Maybe earlier.
Yakov Smirnoff came
Yakov
about.
Smirnoff was a kid in the 80s.
He was a Russian comedian that was here.
Anyway, so he said, I also I could walk into the to the Kremlin, bang my on Khrushchev's desk and say, I don't like the job Reagan's doing, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. So the difference in a parent is, so you love your kid. So what happens when your kid gets married? So what happens? I think you dismiss your kid? No. Now you have more love. Some people think, by the way, that when you have a lot of kids, when you come from a family with a lot of kids, your kids are neglected. You think, how can you love so many people? The answer is because when you care about something, love is not a limited resource. So you could love your kid and your son-in-law. You love your son-in-law?
He's okay.
He's okay. Right? Well,
He's going to take me to the airport, so yeah.
Yeah. After that, there you go. So what makes Avraham special is, although now, there we go. What makes Avraham special is that although now he has a lot more responsibility and everything else, he doesn't forget about Avraham. Although now he's the father of all nations, meaning, what does the father mean? Father means you have responsibilities. Avraham has, Hashem says, and this is by the way what it means to be a Yid. This is what it means to be the chosen people. Hashem chose Avraham. So listen here, mister. I want you to, it's interesting by the way, because Avraham invented the position all on his own, you know that?
Of what?
Avraham invented the position of world teacher on his own. Do you know
World
that?
teacher.
Yeah.
Okay.
He invented the position. When Hashem created the world, we don't find Hashem directing any one individual to teach humanity about ethics and to go around and to preach we don't find that. It was Avraham invented the position. Avraham said, well, no one's doing it, I'll start doing it. So Hashem said, all right, the job is yours. And there's no opting out, by the way.
Does that come with a salary, or is it
Oh, yeah.
hourly?
The land of Israel. That's the salary. That's why the Torah says in Moshe Rabbeinu tells us, if you don't do a job, the land of Israel kicks us out, because it's a contract. Otherwise, what do you? So Avraham. So although Avraham now is the father of all the nations, meaning it's his responsibility to teach humanity about morality and ethics and everything else, he never forgets about his original job. All right. So keeping in mind that Rashi just wants to address the plain meaning. Right? Rashi doesn't get into medrash. There's plenty of commentaries that deal with medrash, like the Ramban and the Even Ezra. There's a whole book over there. It's called the Mikreis Gedilas. It's a chumash. With a bunch of small Hebrew print. My girls have to study all this stuff for tests. And my kid asked me, "Oh, you know it?" So why do you think I know it? I said, I think I know every commentary by heart. I gotta look at it. I'm flattered by your confidence, but so now now we have the question like this. So there's so many names in the Torah that don't have meaning. So what should we do if a name doesn't have meaning? Forget about it, right? If the Torah wants to give you a meaning, give you a meaning. If it doesn't. So like the Even Ezra says, and Nachmanides says in text 4a and 4b, there's the right. Say 4b. Don't go search out meaning for names. If there's no meaning. Although, by the way, it doesn't mean names don't have meaning. It does. There's a story of Rabbi Akiva. That he met a guy. I hope I'm not confusing the stories, but even so, if I confuse two good stories, I'll make one awesome story.
Ooh, that's a fabrication.
So Rabbi Akiva and some of his colleagues were traveling, and they came to an inn. In the olden days, there was no safe in the room, so you would give your money to the host. He would watch it. So the other guys gave the money, and Rabbi Akiva said, "No, I'm not giving you the money." Instead, he hid it in the cemetery. I guess it was over Shabbos, by the headstone. Now, what he didn't know was that the headstone of this, where he hid it, was the father of the innkeeper. So the innkeeper, his father comes to him in the dream and says, "You gotta come." The Gemara tells the story. You gotta come and you have to come and get the money. I don't know how Rabbi Akiva figured out, but he ran before and he got his money. Come Sunday morning, they're getting ready to leave, and Rabbi Akiva's friends, his colleagues say, "Give us some money." So the host says, "What money? How money? Where money? I don't have your money." And they had no way. You run. They had no way. Thank you so much. They had no way to prove it. They had no here run. They had no way to prove that the money. They didn't know what to do. So I think the Gemara gives this story in context of my training. So they went over to the wife, and they said, "Your husband said to give us back the money after he left, I guess." So the wife said, "Really? You said that? Doesn't sound like something my husband would say." So yeah, it's proof. You guys dined together. You guys had beans and something else for breakfast. How do you know? Because he didn't do my mechrenim. So he had some of his in his mustache and his beard. So the wife said, "All right, so they must. He must know." So she gave the money. The guy got so angry when he came home, he beat his wife. I think she died actually. Anyway, so the end of the story. So when they asked Rabbi Akiva, so how did you know not to give the money? He said, I saw something in the guy's name that was something was off. So how can you didn't tell us? I know for sure. I'm not going to speak Lashon Hara about another Jew. Anyway, so there is meaning in names, but the Nachmanides says if we don't know, then don't look out. But Rashi says, that's usually the case. But the problem is, the Torah calls Avraham, and then changes his name to Avraham, and gives a meaning. So that means the name Avraham had a meaning also, right? Because Rashi is trying to lead the reader to understand the text. If you're the reader and the Torah explains Avraham, but doesn't explain Avram, it should bother you, right? So his second name has meaning and the first name didn't have meaning. So Rashi says, no, you have to explain the name. Nachmanides and Even Ezra say, we're not bothered. But Rashi says, no, if you just take the simplest path, you have to explain the name. So as we said last week, so the Rebbe would take a Rashi, he would break it apart, right? And then he would build it back together. Then at the end, he would say, what's the lesson? What's the lesson we're learning from we're learning from Rashi? It's called the Yena Shel Torah, the wine of Torah. The Rebbe went on to explain like this. So we all have every time election result comes in, you got a bing. It's going to be a busy night. I'm kidding around.
Well, it's Moti posting stuff.
Oh wow! All right.
Okay, I've just muted my watch.
Okay, good.
And then I muted this already. So.
All right, so now you got to mute you.
Well, this will keep going and going and going no matter what I do.
So we all have three responsibilities. We have the responsibility to ourselves. Got a responsibility to your community, family, friends, and you got a responsibility to your greater environment. What do you do first?
Well, if I don't look after me, then nobody else is either.
Huh?
I would think yourself first.
Yeah.
Um,
Just like on the airplanes, they say if there's a problem, put your mask on first for you,
do you know
and then
what? Do you know what this is?
take care of everybody.
Do you know what this is?
I figure because it sounds logical. Yeah, you want to make sure you can breathe
No, that's not
before
why.
you start making.
No. They're telling the parents that although you might care about your kid, but in order to save your kid, you have to be able to breathe. That's why. Because the parent instinct is to put it on the kid first. Because it's lack of oxygen. If you want your kid to breathe, do it on yourself first.
That way, if you got two kids, you got a double the chance of getting them all.
By the way, when we flew with kids, they didn't allow. My wife and I were in the same row. They didn't allow us to sit in the same row for that reason, because it's 4 masks per row, and they made my wife switch to a different row because for that reason, because of the masks. Yeah. All right. So we find many times in history that people who had this tremendous impact on society and everything else, their family life was a disaster, because they're putting so much into making an impact. You know, a lot of these people, their kids hate them. The kids say, "Yeah, my father was always, out doing something else."
He loved you more than me.
Yeah, so all these people that are accomplishing all these things, you go to their kids. So, do the kids feel loved? The kids feel, or the kids feel neglected. So maybe that's why they dig into family life when a candidate runs for office. So let's look what the Rebbe says. Here goes. Ready? Text number 5. So we have self, right? Family, community. Here we go. Text, so many. Number 1 begins with you. All right. In the life of a person, our primary responsibility is ourselves. And this can be divided into 3 general tiers, and we must do our best in each. The 3 tiers are: number 1 is the best we can be in terms of character and behavior. But by the way, which only makes sense, because if I come to you and I say, Ira, you need to
Easy on this shoulder.
Yeah, sorry.
What's the matter? You exercised?
No. I did something to the shoulder.
Okay, so
Getting
come on this.
physical therapy.
So come on this side.
That makes it a magnet to someone else's hand.
Yeah, I know.
So come on this side so I can punch you in the shoulder. I gotta punch somebody, right? If I come to you, if a person comes to another person and say, you got to be better. So you're telling me about being better. Have you looked at yourself in the mirror? It's very hard to have influence on somebody when you're a mess, right? But that's not necessarily why you become better. But the first thing you got to do is you got to work on yourself.
I learned something interesting. You said mirror. You're not allowed to daven in front of a mirror.
That's right.
Yeah, or pictures.
Pictures?
Right. Or pictures, yeah. That's why we don't have. There's no pictures. If we ever put a poster, if you ever realize, I never put flyers on the east wall, or even front. I always put at the back or yeah.
To the sides.
Yeah, that can be. So and then after a person works on themselves, and they're confident, we say, listen, you have to go teach people. You have to go work with people, and they can't say, hey, I'm still working with myself. There's a story that where's the story written? I don't know. That the Baal Shem Tov was a tremendously capable person, and when he received, we're not going to get into how, why, a message from above that it was time for him to go public with his message and teach everybody. He didn't want. He said, I'm not interested in dealing with people. He had a very low tolerance for the fallacy and the corruption of people. He wanted to be left alone. From a little child, he wanted to go to the forest, be left alone. So his teacher told him, let me tell you a story. There was once a man, and he was a very, very normal man. And one day, he gets a knock on his door, and a guy comes into his house and says, let me tell you who I am. He says, I am Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. This is the guy's telling the Baal Shem Tov. He says, I will teach you the entire Torah if you tell me what you did on the day of your bar mitzvah. So the guy says, what I did on the day of my bar mitzvah, I did it for God alone. And I'm not telling anybody. So I'll teach you the entire Torah. Says, you can take your offer, go fly a kite. So he left. Leo Navi comes back and says, because you were willing to sacrifice so much, and because you want your act to be dedicated to God alone, I was commanded from above to teach you the entire Torah anyway. So this guy went from being a simple Jew to now having absolute mastery of the entire Torah. And so this is what Baal Shem Tov is being told. You know what happened? Nothing. The entire town thought this guy was a regular Jew. He died everyone in town thinking he's a regular Jew. This guy who had the capacity to have so much influence and do so much good because he was very humble. This guy's telling the Baal Shem Tov, you know whose soul you have? You have that guy's soul. The whole reason why his soul came back was to rectify that mistake. Do you think God gave you capabilities and talents to keep to yourself? Yeah, you work on yourself and you improve yourself. But once you do that, your job is to go help other people. Otherwise, what do you have talent for? So it's after you work on yourself, second thing you got to do is you got to work in the relationships with you work with the community to assist people, try to be better. And then if God is really blessed you with tremendous talents, the third tier is which you could say we're not ostensibly responsible. These are people beyond the physical, spiritual reach. However, we must do our best to reach them. It's because everyone's obligated to say the world's created for me. That means you got to try to do the best. And how do you do? You begin with yourself. That's the first thing you got to do. You have to mix. Sometimes you feel I'll skip step 2. I'll skip step 1. I'll go step 2. It's very easy to go to somebody. Let me tell you what you're doing wrong. Right? It's very easy. And look what I'm doing wrong. Forget that. Let's focus on you.
You know what you're doing wrong? You're listening to me.
Right. Right. Because it's very hard to have a positive influence on another person when you yourself are not a true person. Maybe the message is a good message. But if the messenger is corrupted, sometimes the message doesn't come through. And without getting into which party, whatever it is, this is the problem that people have with politicians. They come up there and they give messages, and we're saying, I should listen to this guy. I should listen to this person. Look at the kind of person they are. They're a false person. They're a liar. Whatever it is. It could be what they're saying is very good. It could be the message they're saying is very good. But the problem is when we don't see a person is trying to improve themselves. It's very, very hard to listen. We shut down. The first thing you got to do is you got to work on your own behavior. Doesn't mean, by the way, you have to be perfect before you go talk to another person. But if other people see that you're trying to improve, so for example, you can go to somebody and say, want to come to shul, and they answer, so why you all of a sudden you're a religious fanatic? You're observant to the 613 mitzvahs. You can say, no, I'm not perfect, but working on it. I started keeping kosher. I go to shul. Started putting on tefillin. I'm a work in progress. So I'm a work in progress. You're a work in progress. Let's come together. Talking to another person, you don't have to be perfect. You have to be a work in progress. You have to be. But if people see that a person is only, it's only about what you do, not about me, then the message falls. It falls short. Like the famous line of the Gemara, Rish Lakish said, "K'sheit atzmecha, fix yourself. The story in the Gemara with Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai was a big rabbi, and he was a halachic authority in the town. And the guy comes to him one day and says, "I have a tree. The trunk is in my property, but the branches are hanging over, and people are complaining it's a nuisance. Do I have to cut it down?" So Rabbi Yanai says, "Come back to me tomorrow." So Rabbi Yanai went home that night. He cut down his tree. He had a tree, the same thing. And then when the guy came to him the next day, he said, "See, you had to cut down your tree." The guy said, "Hey," he was ready for the answer. "What about your tree?" He says, "Go check. Go check if my tree is there." If you see a tree there, you don't have to cut down the tree. If you don't see a tree there, you have to cut down the tree. What happened? So Bianai realized that it was a nuisance, but people were afraid to tell the rabbi, he thought he was providing shade for people. Turned out he was a nuisance the entire time. But when he realized, he cut down the tree. So when people see that we are acting, we're trying to act, positively. We're trying to act properly. Then we have integrity and all that. Then we can move forward, right? And the next thing you got to do is. Next thing we got to do is we got to work on our inner circle. Inner circle is our family, right? And sometimes either because we're looking people that look too much inward, or too much outward, they neglect the people closest to them. Too much inward means you only care about yourself, but their own. So let's say for example, let's take the Rebbe, right? The Rebbe was a guy. I shouldn't say guy. The Rebbe was a person, one of the greatest minds in the past hundreds of years, and yet he spent time talking to us bums. You know what he could have done by himself? Right? Imagine the Rebbe was left alone to learn. Look what happened with the story of Lag BaOmer, of Shimon Bar Yochai, and his son Rabbi Elazar, who were in this cave for 12 years. What happened when they came out? They were on a different level. They were more spiritual than physical. Not only that, they couldn't even tolerate and understand why are people plowing their field, wasting their time with that stuff. And it says wherever they looked, the plants would wither and die. They were at a crazy different level. So God said to them, you came out of the cave to destroy my world, get back into the cave. So they spent a year in the cave, an extra year for like purgatory kind of thing. But the point is, sometimes when we're focused on self-improvement, we neglect the people closest to us. Or sometimes when people are, trying to become something greater, people all these. Look at text number 7. It says, you see, there we go. You see, text number 7. You read, who's this? Maggie Etheridge. Right? Gandhi's children didn't like him. There's a bunch. She wrote a whole book, Children of Movement. If you read text number 7. You see it there. So there's all these people that were children of the movement, of leaders of movements. They're all big knockers, but their family life is a disaster. That's normal. Man, it's normal. I mean, it is normal, unfortunately. But that's the way it's supposed to be. Clearly not. Obviously, see what makes Avraham special, by the way. We see in next week's Torah portion, when Hashem tells why is Avraham special is because he's going to teach his children. He's going to teach his children, and he's going to have an impact on the world. It means you have to have time for your. Sometimes you have to be able to, even though self-advancement is at risk, you have to be able to put it aside, focus on your kid. Which, by the way, is the beauty of Shabbos. That's why Shabbos is so beautiful, because you could be the busiest stock trader, whatever it is, real estate, milk, whatever it is, but there is no answering the phone. On Shabbos is only your family. It forces you, without you realizing, without even you trying, to make your family and friends the focus. That's the. You ever hear the story? I know now he's a schmobagel. The story with P. Diddy's lawyer. You read the story?
Who?
No, what story is this?
So, P. Diddy's lawyer. I think
Diddy.
His lawyer.
Yeah.
So he got into trouble, or he wasn't. I think something he was at a club or shooting, something like that. I don't remember exactly. It's been a while since I watched that video. Anyway, so he finds out this lawyer is a big criminal defense attorney. And he comes over to him and he says, I heard you. So he says, all right, I need all your numbers. This is the guy, the lawyer, telling the story. I need all your numbers. Anyone who works for me. And he says, you have to realize this guy is not just a person, he's a corporation. This guy has people working for him. He's a whole big thing. He says, I need you to be available always. I need all your numbers, 24/7. So he says, yeah, I'll give you all my numbers, but 24/6. So he said, well, what do you mean? I don't answer the phone on Shabbos. He said, but this is important. I'm sure, but I don't answer the phone on Shabbos. What if it's an emergency? If it's an emergency, he tells him, you call my office, and then they send the fax, and they pick it up. It's really emergency, then we'll figure it. Okay, so he says, it comes the first Friday night, and the phone's ringing, and the phone's ringing, and the guy doesn't give up, and it's ringing and ringing and ringing. Says the whole Friday night the phone's ringing. After Shabbos, he says, you know something? He's not picking up the phone. After Shabbos, he calls him up and says, no, what's the emergency? He says, it wasn't an emergency. So he says, what do you mean? So he says, you just won me $10,000. This is what Diddy tells the lawyer. So I bet my homies he wouldn't pick up the phone. Right? So that's what Shabbos is. You could be the biggest, most important person, but Shabbos you focus on. Many times we look at mitzvahs as religious and service of God in nature, which it is. But every mitzvah also has a benefit, a physical, material, or mental benefit for us. So you work on yourself, right? And then you got to give time for the closest people next to you, right? Your children or your household. So and you see over here, Mr. Miller here says, you're spending time with your kids. Take them with you. You buy them. I was actually telling someone the story that the story happened last year. We were in the car with my kids. I said, Tati, can we go to 7-Eleven? I said, no. So why? Because they were like, but I don't get it. Why not? I said, not every time you get into the car with your father. Usually I just drive them to school and they're not in the car with me after that. So if they're in the car with me in the afternoon, it means obviously the end result is you get a Slurpee. That's the logical conclusion. Because it happened once, twice, 3 times. I said, not every time you're in the car with me, it means you get a Slurpee. So it was like an earth-shattering moment. Right? When the kids go and they take apart and everything else, then the kids see that they're important. All right. After yourself and after your family comes the community. Right. Now that you created a force for good, now you got to show everybody how it's done. And where do we start? So if you look at text number 9, It says there's a law of tzedakah, right? So let's say you have limited funds. Where do you go to first? The first is Chabad of Permanent Pines. It should be. I thought I put a sticker in everyone's book. No, it's not there. No. So Maimonides says. So it says Anishu kreve l'kol mechodim. It says a poor person that's a relative comes first. Then you have in your family. Then you have your city. Then you have based on the verse. It means you have a responsibility to do the most good for the people around you. There's a story where there was a rabbi in Morocco. His name was Rabbi Shalom Messas, and he was offered to be the chief rabbi of Haifa. So he wrote into the Rebbe, say, I got this offer, and he thought the Rebbe was going to say for sure, right, to go from Morocco to Eretz Yisrael, right? It's a mitzvah to go live in Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe says, no, your job, because if you leave the community in Morocco, what's going to be about the people in Morocco? Right? Yeah, you yourself could do better in Haifa, but what about the people in Morocco? So you can't leave. This is the letter, text 10, is a letter that Rebbe sent him. I was surprised to hear that Your Honor was advised to consider relocating. I am certain the suggestion is impractical, considering the multitudes not only in the city, but in the country at large, that require your Honor's mentorship. They require you as Lecha guidance and your inspiration to love and fear Hashem. Nevertheless, it says, permit myself to write about this in the confidence you will certainly continue to lead your congregation. And he goes on in the letter, and he continues to say that they may be continue to strengthen your Torah study. So we learn from Avraham like this. This is what the Rebbe said. This is the Rebbe said in his talk, learning from Rashi. So having a positive impact on the community around you doesn't come as an expense to you. Doesn't come at an expense to your family. It all works together. This is why Avraham is the father of all nations. This is the beauty of Avraham. Avraham had this ability to talk to everybody, and never to make anyone feel like you're not important. Even though Avraham was the most important person. When Yitzchak is born, he makes a feast. The who's who of, like Melech Bashan is there, Malki Shalom is there. Everybody came, but anyone who walked into we find in the beginning of next week's Parshat, Avraham has a bris milah, and what is he doing? He's waiting for anybody to come as a guest, because nobody was too small for Avraham. We'll see in the beginning of next week. He even put a God on hold to serve guests. Did you know that? The only person that ever put God on hold, call waiting. Did you do that? Avraham speaking to God, all of a sudden he sees 3 guests. He tells God, sorry, we got to continue the conversation later. Nobody was too small. Avraham said, someone needs help. I mean, obviously, Hashem approved of his. So Avraham was well-centered, and because of that, he was able to have influence. Okay, here we go. Well, and this is the true for all Jewish people. We are the children of Avraham. Though all Jews must exert whatever influence they can the world over, you must know the first obligation is local community. Only after becoming a father to your local community, have an influence in the local community, then you can become father to the world at large. All right, so you have a responsibility to help everybody, but you have to work closest to yourself. Yourself and anyone else. Our key point: Avraham's life mission was to be spiritual father of Aram, his birthplace. His father unwittingly called him Avram, an acronym for father of Aram. He didn't. His father Terach didn't realize when he was giving him the name. He was 99. Hashem appoints him to be the father of all nations. At that time, Hashem changed his name to Avram, an acronym of Av Hamoin, the father to multitudes. A proper acrostic would be Abham, a father of nations. Hashem called him Avram to indicate that though his portfolio expanded, his responsibility to Aram would remain intact. First, from this we learn that we have to help every person in our reach. But our first responsibility is those closest to us, which starts off with herself. So the pyramid of responsibilities is you got to work on yourself, then you got to work on your kids or your family, and then you work on a local community. Finally, from afar, it's like Herzog said, every Jew's a president. Right? You have your influence. Let's be the children of Avraham. Let's start working. Have a good week.